Here we are again.
Here we are again.
Here we are. Do you know what? I was watching on telly last night. There was this great documentary about Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, yeah.
And Christine McVie is no longer with us, very sadly. But she was talking about how she wrote her songs. Okay. And I thought this was really interesting. She said the most important bit is the chorus, and it's got to be memorable. It's got to have a catchy melody to it. So she starts with the chorus.
Yeah.
Sort of makes sense with you. I've never written songs, so I've got no idea. And then she works back to say, how can I write a story that fits that chorus, that leads up to that chorus? And that's what makes the verses. But the reason you get catchy pop songs, and I thought that's clever. That's sort of starting with end in mind, which is one of those things. How many times have we used that?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, write the chorus first now. That'll be my new.
So you're going to write a song, are you?
You imagine what that'd be like. It's not going to be as good as your Christmas poem last year. You're the worst.
I've written a few songs. I think I wrote one on.
Did you perform one?
I wrote one on about Facebook about 15 years ago. Someone had written something on Facebook that they said that they had. They said they were very sorry for what they had done and hoped they hadn't hurt anyone. And I was just like, well, what have you done? Like, what have you said? Who have you hurt? Yeah. So that's the chorus. You see, that's. So maybe one day if we get a guitar, I can play that song.
Choose your instrument.
And there was another that I wrote called Hippie Hypocrisy, but we probably don't need to get into that.
I reckon this is now definitely, everybody listening now, please stay tuned. One of these episodes, we're going to have a guest performance.
But it is, start with the end in mind. That's always, I remember Bill Bailey saying, whenever he writes a joke, he starts with the laughter and then works backwards to say, what would induce that level of mirth? That's it.
I can hear Bill Bailey saying that. That's brilliant. Very good.
So,
okay, should we start a podcast?
I think we should.
Okay, welcome back. This is Dave Parry from Wellmeadow, and you're listening to the SME Growth Podcast. We all want to grow our businesses, and so we're here to discuss a few ideas for getting more leads and then converting them to customers. And today with me, I've got Richard Buckle. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about goals.
Goals.
Not the football World Cup type of goals.
No.
That's a goal, I suppose.
So goals. I guess that's topical at the moment. So goals, why are they important for marketing is what we want to look at today and go through that. So there's a couple of reasons why goals are important. I suppose these generally apply, but if we contextualize it for marketing, then we want to see having a goal gives you something to aim at, gives you some focus. If you've got a team around you, you want to try and pull everyone in the same direction. Something to focus your efforts on, give you some clarity as to what exactly it is that you're trying to achieve. Things like alignment. So if you've got multiple people working in different ways, so imagine sales and marketing team, you kind of want to have some sort of an alignment, and a goal is something. Yeah,
it's kind of a way of saying what the priorities are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because by having a goal in one area and not in another, that's saying that's what the organization is valuing. That's what it wants.
And I think another important point of having goals is it's a way of measuring progress. So without having some sort of target, how do you know whether you've succeeded or not? So it's almost a way of how do we define success?
I mean, it all sounds a bit obvious, doesn't it? Because we all sort of know goals are, we talk about it in business all the time. You should have goals, and if you haven't got any, what's the point? But I don't suppose people have looked into the research on it, and maybe they just take it as read. But there is a lot of research out there that says having clear goals, and we all know what that means, that really does improve your chances of succeeding at the thing you're trying to do.
Well, and it's the sort of thing that we all do. It's one of those things that we do all the time, isn't it? It's a bit like when we talked about buyer journeys. We all go through them, but we maybe don't know that we're doing it. We all have goals. I mean,
just subliminally.
Everyone's got New Year's resolutions, or effectively that's. Well,
I used to have.
Well, they did. So we all go through a process of having goals. Everyone's got something they want to achieve in their life, however big or small it is. But maybe we don't always break it down or think about it in a way that actually helps us achieve it.
But if you don't make them explicit, if you don't put a name on them, then are they really a goal? If it's sort of something that after you've done it, you say that was my goal. Well, that's kind of cheating a bit, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It only really works if you put a name on it, write it down, put it on a fridge magnet or whatever, and that's what.
It's accountability as well, isn't it? It gives you that sort of
to yourself.
Nothing else. So if you put yourself out there to say, and I remember years ago we had to stand up and give our goals at ACE or something every year for what you want to do. And that whole process of actually verbalizing something, writing it down.
Tell your friends.
Gives a level of accountability, but it also changes your behavior. So that's another reason.
You ramp up the moral jeopardy of failure, don't you?
Yeah.
If you don't tell anybody, then you can just pretend you never existed. If you publicize it, put it in the paper, I don't know. So I think the biggest thing I find from goals, all those things for sure, that's really important. But I have this tremendous sense of achievement if I can tick a goal off. Even at micro goals, let's say you've got a lot on in one day, and you think, I can't just sort of get through it and remember. I'm going to write a list, and I've got these 10 things I've got to get done. Every single tick on that list gives you a little boost of little hormone, a little
dopamine hit.
Done my bit. Well, So yes, goals are important.
So goals are important. So
just reinforcing that point, but it's not a myth.
So I think we could talk about, how do we define goals?
I know where you're going.
So
I think this might be a very smart answer.
This might be a very smart answer. So if you have ever been in business, you'll probably know what SMART goals are. So we really don't want to labour the point on that. But
it's a good checklist.
It's a good checklist. It is common sense, to be perfectly honest, but common sense isn't that common and all of that type of
No, and sometimes you need to be reminded, and maybe you think you've got a good goal and you've missed one of the 5 or something. Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound.
So
I quite like, and we've got this little worksheet, haven't we, which we use with clients, which you can get on our resources page of the website. And that's got nice little tick boxes in it just for the 5 letters of SMART. You don't need to have that, do you? But actually it makes it nice and explicit, and it allows people to rally around a more well-defined.
And I think it's one of those things SMART goals it is a little bit, I don't know, what do you call it, cliche, or been definitely there, done it. Everybody's, it's a bit like, putting the word strategy at the end of another word. It just makes it feel important for some reason.
Or system.
So, or innovative or something. So, I probably need to check our website now to make sure I'm not covered in those words. But I think it's still important to have I think the main important thing is to have something that is clear, concise, written down, that you're going to be held accountable to, that's got some kind of objective there that you're working towards. Like that. So if SMART goals help you do that, if writing it on the wall helps you, whatever it is that works for you, some of this is contextualized. So
write it down. Okay, well, let's talk through then the various stages from a marketing concept of where we might look to have goals. And I think the important thing to note at the beginning is that goals in each of these areas aren't equally weighted. By choosing where you have your goals and how stretching they are, you're deciding where to put your effort, assuming people try and achieve the goals. But it's still worth going through the various stages to work out, do I need a goal here or not? Or am I already there?
Yeah, and this will be contextualized for every business, won't it? Every business will be at different stages. Some may be looking to get loads of customers, some may have loads of email addresses, and therefore looking to nurture what they've already got.
So this refers back to our growth generator, doesn't it? We've got that.
Yeah.
That's on our homepage even. We talk about that, the various stages that a journey that a prospect goes through. And at the very, very beginning, you've got complete strangers out there that maybe don't even know that you exist. There's no awareness. So you start with awareness, and then you may have a goal around increasing that. And you can measure the success of that, because they may then actually interact with you in some way. You're social, come on your website, respond to whatever else you put out there.
Controversial statement. Survey in 2021 by HubSpot said that out of 1,000 global marketers, 48% said their primary goal when running a campaign was to increase brand awareness.
Right.
Agree or disagree?
Discuss.
Discuss.
It's an essay question. Well, I'm going to have to be careful not to be rude here, I think, but I understand why people might say that. And I've come across marketing departments across the land where that is definitely the key measure of marketing success. But as you know, we've got a bit of a mantra here at Wellmeadow that says marketing is about lead generation, not rocket science. We are not the colouring in department. We have to focus on things that help the organisation get new customers. Now, awareness is a good element of that, but it's not the be-all and end-all, is it?
Yeah, I think people do have to obviously be aware of your business in order to interact with it.
The right people.
The right people.
Aware, not just, we know a business with 1 million views on their TikTok. which is great for awareness. But if they're not in your market.
Yeah. So this is back to, again, like, who's your buyer persona, isn't it? And are you raising awareness within the right group of people rather than, it can cost a lot of money to educate the world, as we've found out in various business endeavors.
Businesses we work with.
So awareness is important, but it's got to be targeted, isn't it? That's the kind of, so if you have got a brand awareness goal, make sure it's targeted. Just having a huge amount of people following you on TikTok or something.
Yeah, the whole Facebook followers count. I think we've heard the phrase vanity metrics before. That's their watchword, isn't it? You've got to guard against come up with a number that's easier to achieve but doesn't actually get you to the end.
But if you did want to measure it, then you could look at things like, obviously, social media reach, SEO. Do you come up as does your company name come up in a SEO search?
Yeah, Search Console or SEMrush or something will give you the number of impressions that your website has managed to achieve as a result of a search phrase. Not whether it's been clicked on or not, just is it being shown even? So that's a start. So they can be important, but I think the guarding word on that is not to be too much of a slave to it, unless that really, you thought that through and decided that is the key gap in your marketing.
And I also think as well, just, putting my cynic's hat on, which may surprise you.
Have you got any others? Is there another hat?
A logo isn't a brand. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, there's a podcast in that one.
So you've made some people aware of your business, the right people, hopefully. So another potential measure that you might have is, can you get them on your website?
Yeah. So you've at least got strangers. You don't know who they are, but they're clicking on something.
They're clicking on it.
You've got some eyeballs for, how long is it? How many seconds between going on the website and the back arrow being clicked? You haven't got long.
Seconds, isn't it? A couple of seconds.
So you've at least got them to that stage. You've got a chance to say something to that audience. So that's another good one. That could be still a vanity metric if you're not careful, but I think this is more robust of a measure. You do need to have, assuming they're the right type of people and they're coming there for the right reasons and you haven't paid for traffic.
Well, I think you've got to look at the measures around the, so if your goal is to get more people on your website, that's actually quite an easy goal to achieve. Because you can cheat at that, and so I suppose this is important.
You can pay for it.
You've got a business, and you're not in charge of actually running your marketing, or it's not something you're keeping an eye on. If you get reports given to you that says, "Hey, we've had like 10,000 people on the website this month," and you think, "Oh, that's great," you want to dig into that because it's the behaviours of what they're doing on the website that's important.
Yeah, and have some sort of measure of engagement, even if it's just how long they've been on the website for, or the number of page views, or ideally doing something a bit more interactive, downloading an asset perhaps, entering their email address somewhere to get something, or clicking on the find out more or meet us. What's the measure of success? And every web page should have an objective for what you want the user to do. So how many of those objectives have been met? Have they clicked those call to action buttons and navigated deeper and deeper in? So if you're the business owner and you're being told, it's great, our web visitor traffic has gone up by 50% ever since I took over, boss, great, but ask that supplementary question. Has the next measure along the train, has that one gone up as well? So if not, you just front end padding, really.
Well, the scary thing, back to my trusty 2021 HubSpot survey of 1,000 marketers, 54% of marketers surveyed said that web traffic is the most important metric when measuring the effectiveness of their content marketing. So that's,
slightly more than the percentage that said that brand awareness is important.
So it could well be for your business that web traffic is the measure, but be careful.
As long as it then leads to the next thing. So you've got to imagine this series of goals, each with their own measure, that one leads to another. And if there's a break in the chain at any point, then it's not worth it, is it?
Well, you're bringing in a Fleetwood Mac reference there, aren't you?
The chain, which apparently is talking about the 5 members of the band. Don't break the chain, because that's the 5 of them. At that point, there were 5. Didn't know that before.
Right, sure. My dad told me about it.
Yes, okay. Moving on.
So
that's the web traffic bit.
Web traffic.
So awareness, yes, maybe. Web traffic, more likely to be, yes, but as long as it leads on to the next thing, if you like.
But something we hear a lot of people say what they want is more leads. The goal is to get more leads.
That's what we always say about marketing generally, isn't it? It's a lead generation department.
No.
So if your web's doing its job, somehow it gets more leads.
Scarily, back to my survey.
This is a good value
survey. Good value survey, this. 27% of marketers said that getting leads was the most important. Now that is seems counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
But
that's one to watch for then. If you're in charge of the business, the marketing department, or of the business as a whole, ask your marketing function generally, is that something that they are regarding as their primary goal?
Yeah.
Get me more leads. So if I had a situation where marketing and sales are different departments and I was in charge of sales, I'd be saying that to my marketing colleague. You bring me good quality leads, I'll take it from there. Just like the salespeople say, I'll get them into orders, and then maybe the production department say, you get me good quality customers, I'll take it from there.
An interesting side note there, just thinking about it. Who is it that's setting these goals as well, isn't it? So this is, if we're looking at this survey and seeing, well, if you've got a marketing team, are they setting their own goals in isolation and looking at brand awareness and web visits when actually the rest of the business is saying, well, what we need is leads. So it's,
surely this is the job of a leader, different sense of the lead, the business leader, the owner manager, or certainly the MD. They have to make sure that there's almost a service level agreement here between each link in the chain. And, I've often used the metaphor of the passing on of the baton in a relay race, but if marketing is the start of the process, maybe you've got product design or something further upstream, but marketing bring the leads in, then sales convert the leads to customers, production convert those customers to invoices, and financing convert invoices to cash, and there's a bit of a circle. So if the business owner knows what the end result needs to be, I need a certain amount of profit or maybe cash flow, you can work backwards.
Yeah.
And it should be almost then obvious that you need X number of leads per month, because with all the ratios of conversion thereafter, we know what that turns into in profit.
In terms of measuring lead value, we've done some work with clients to actually try and put some figures on this, haven't we?
Our famous GMA flag.
GMA flag.
So this is a neat little device we came up with. Generated by marketing activity is our GMA. And we set a flag up on each of the contacts, the companies, and the deals within the CRM pipeline, didn't we? And there were rules for when that flag was allowed to be set, or indeed when it was blocked from being set. So if there's some other reason why a person, a company, or a deal may well trigger those conditions, but we know really that they're there for other reasons, then you can't allow that to be counted as GMA, generated from marketing activity. But once you've got that flag set, it's then quite interesting to run a report every month of how many quotes have we produced from those leads, and what's the value of those quotes, that we can definitely say is as a result of what the marketing department have done.
Yeah. Which I suppose leads then on to another goal, isn't it? What is the value of, you may have a value of quotes or value of sales, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think
get more
you're
customers.
Right. In that chain of goals that we've talked about, awareness up front, web traffic maybe, leads because they're doing something. The crystallization of a lead getting close to being a customer is the quote value.
The quote value.
How many quotes? What's the value? And then some of those will be converted by winning them into customers.
And I think from a marketing point of view, to be able to look at the return on investment of what's been generated, isn't it? So if we're talking about marketing's job is to bring the leads in and sales job is to convert those leads, from a marketer's point of view, you want to be able to put some numbers on that.
Yeah.
Rather than it just, looking at return on investment on, I suppose return on investment on actual sales is probably the more important metric.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But it's also interesting to know, how are the marketing efforts, are we wasting those? Are we getting a huge amount of value of quotes in, but we're not converting them, so we never win them.
Yeah, it's you said about getting traffic to your website, easy to do. In a way, it could also be easy to get lots of quotes if the marketing gives the illusion that you're going to be a cheaper, better mousetrap, and then when the quote goes out, it doesn't. You'll have produced loads of quotes from people with high expectations that you don't meet, and you just don't win the work. So it's got to be realistic. And each of these stages have got a percentage attrition, if you like, to go through to the next stage. So not all quotes end up being orders, just like not all leads end up producing quotes, and not all web visitors end up being leads.
Yeah.
So you've got to know what those percentages are, haven't you, all the way through?
So I suppose then another, getting down to the nuts and bolts of it, really, a marketing goal could well be to increase the revenue, isn't it? That may not be, they may have, when it's moving into sales, they may lose some of that handle on that.
The marketing and sales goal is to increase revenue, or at least to bring in the required amount of the appropriate orders at the right time. It's no good saying I've hit my yearly target of order intake in January and I'm not going to have anything now from February, December. You're going to have a lot of upset customers because they can't do it. So I've always defined that for the sales team. They've got to bring in the right orders at the right value at the right time. And therefore marketing, to satisfy that, have to bring in the right quality of leads that need quotes at the right time in the right quantity and so on.
Do you think marketing departments maybe get increased revenue as a goal forced upon them? Or is it something?
In my experience, I think marketing departments, and at risk of upsetting any marketeers listening, they get off the hook a bit lightly because they're allowed to hide behind the fact that it is hard to measure. It's a flipping hard job to do and very hard to get it right. But if you don't get the sales, then it's easy to say, well, that's the sales department's fault because they can't convert very well.
Yeah.
Or maybe they haven't got enough leads of the right quality to convert in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think if you were to be a very focused, target-driven, goal-driven business owner, you'd be asking your sales department to get the order intake in, for sure, but you'd also be asking your marketing department to get a certain number of lead value opportunities every month as well.
And so if your goal was then to increase revenue, what sort of measures would we be looking at? Things like average order value per customer, frequency.
Exactly. If we're going down to the whole share of wallet thing, you could look at the frequency of purchase, the average value, that lifetime value of a customer can be made up of multiplying those things together. Just like upstream, what's the cost of acquisition? And those two numbers are really the that's the litmus test, isn't it? If the cost of acquisition is lower than the lifetime value of the customer, then it's worth doing more of it. And that's an interesting point for marketing departments as well, because you can use that to justify investing more in marketing
up front,
right up until the point where the cost of acquisition of the next customer matches the lifetime value. Then there's no point doing it. But up until that point, it's worth doing more and more. So, and it always amazes me that companies may have a really effective way of bringing in new leads, but they don't double it or do more of it.
Yeah.
They say, we do this Google Ads campaign, we spend £1,000 a month on that, and that brings us a certain number of leads. Well, great. Why don't you spend £2,000 a month then?
Yeah, find the saturation point.
Where's the curve start flattening off?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
So another goal that you might have for marketing might be brand engagement. So this is slightly different to brand awareness in that people already know about you. You're not educating them about your brand. It's how does your business or your brand engage with its existing customers, suppliers, network of people? Yeah,
I think it's important to distinguish between brand awareness and brand engagement, because awareness is at the front end of the pipeline, which leads people then to come and find out about you. Brand engagement are people who may or probably are already customers or have been very close to being customers. Maybe they've been an introducer or some other partner in the process. And they are helping you with your marketing then, either by being an advocate and giving you referrals or just speaking about you nicely in the pub, or doing that thing called earned media, which is the reviews online or reposting social content. So they're lending the weight of their brand by promoting what you've done.
Sort of giving you some of their trust, I suppose, isn't it? That's almost the currency of...
Definitely a high trust level, because they're lending their audience to you for a period of time, aren't they? Saying, look at all these people I know, look at this other company over here, I rate them. So that's the brand engagement as opposed to brand.
And there's different ways of measuring that. So you could look at net promoter scores or doing surveys.
Yeah, or the referral rates.
A
bit like marketing, what really matters is getting leads.
Yeah.
What matters from your advocates and your highly engaged brand engagement people, it's how many referrals.
How many referrals have you got? And then finally, maybe a marketing goal, which is slightly different, because all the ones we've discussed so far have been more externally focused. But some of the things that we're coming across at the moment are more their marketing goals that are internally focused. So there's not a lot of point of having a great set of marketing messages that if no one in your business understands them or even knows about them even, then
you could have a big disconnect there.
Yeah.
And I knew a business owner once who said, I don't need a marketing department because everyone in the organization is in marketing. We all, in some way or another, impact the customer's view of us, even if we don't meet them.
Yeah.
We make the product or deliver the service that gives the customer that opinion of us. So I get that. Everyone's got to be involved, but they've got to know what your marketing messages are.
Yeah.
Because if they're saying something different to what the marketing department are pushing out, we're going to have a really big problem.
And I think as well, there's I don't know, there's a reasonable amount of cognitive dissonance, I think, sometimes between business owners thinking that everybody has that view of their business. Now, there are some businesses where it's, you like a stick of rock, isn't it? You cut them in half and that's the brand and the brand values and all of that. But I think more often than not, there is an aspiration that everybody is doing marketing. If you say to people, when you're in the pub with your friends, how do you describe the business that you're in, is a pretty good indicator as to whether or not.
And I think the biggest challenge of the SMEs we've come across on this is where the business is making a component part or service that goes into something much, much bigger. And it's then hard to get the message across to the people in the client that's making the component, to get them as excited as the salespeople will be, and certainly as the customer is, about their product.
Yeah.
So imagine if you're making, a part for a space rocket, a SpaceX product. If you're making, a nut and bolt or something, it's very hard to get your employee to get so excited about helping to put a man on the moon type mission stuff.
Or Mars.
Or Mars now, moon's old hat. Although they're going back. Whereas if you're making the rocket, then it's a lot easier to get people excited about that. So you've got to somehow make sure that the internal people know the consequences, the importance to your customer of this nut and bolt.
And this ties into things like your values and things, isn't it? Your vision, all of that type of...
Yeah, your purpose and stuff. Yeah, well, there's a whole new podcast about that.
Podcast on that. But I think one of the measures then, so making sure that you've got the externally focused goals aligned properly to where your business is at, but also making sure that internally everyone is saying consistent messaging, understanding what the marketing messages are, is an important goal in and of itself. Because if you don't get that right, you're going to end up with this disconnect.
Yeah, that's good. So why don't we just quickly summarize then that chain of the goals where you should at least consider having them. Starts with awareness, and the health warnings around it, but it could be appropriate. That could lead to web traffic or some other form of engagement at the early stage. That then hopefully generates leads. Leads generate quotes or ask for quotes. Quotes can turn into customers. Customers can turn into engaged ambassadors, advocates. And then there's the internal aspect of that itself.
Yeah.
Now, you may have goals in all of those areas, but ideally you've prioritized somewhere that some goals
there'll be a weighting, won't there?
A weighting, yeah.
And then just a quick point, I suppose, with all of those goals, how do you actually measure your progress on them? So there'll be a whole load of data flying in. That's modern marketing, data driven. So some form of data visualization is often helpful in terms of actually tracking and measuring goals. So there's lots of different ways we can do that. Have you had any experience?
Well,
of anything?
The dashboard software out there now is absolutely incredible, and you can certainly make boring data maybe look very visually attractive. And whilst that can be accused of being eye candy, it does work. It does drive engagement. If you have a well-presented dashboard or even just a well-presented graph in Excel, it can make a world of difference between whether that generates the right debate and changes behavior as opposed to an almost impenetrable graph or table of numbers. So it's really important to present the data well if you're trying to get other people to engage in it.
Sounds like we could do a whole podcast on data visualization.
I think, okay. Up for that. Put that one on the list. Good. Excellent. Well, that's probably about all we've got time for, isn't it? So you've been listening to the SME Growth Podcast on Goals this week. Please subscribe to our podcast or give us a rating wherever you get your podcasts from. And perhaps more importantly, tell your business friends all about it. Send them an email with the link. Next week, we'll be doing a podcast on vision. What is vision in a strategic sense? And it's the start of a new series of podcasts where we're talking about the vision strategy and implementation of business goals. So until then, goodbye.